Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Brothers and sisters in faith, welcome back in another video. Today I'm going to show you some shocking clips of Dr. Bardi Ahmad about the manuscripts and text of the New Testament and about the manuscripts and text of the Holy Quran. So let's begin.
Everybody agrees. We don't have the originals, we have thousands of copies, and the thousands of copies have tens, if not hundreds of thousands of differences among them. Are any of these differences important? Or are they all fluff? Did Jesus say, "Let the one who is without sin be the first to cast a stone at her"? It's a wonderful and familiar saying of Jesus, but it's based on a scribal variation that is an error. It was not originally in the New Testament Gospels, as Craig has just told us. Did Jesus say, "Neither do I condemn you, go and sin no more"? Well, does it matter whether Jesus said it or not? Turns out it's only in a textual variant. It was not in the original New Testament. Did Jesus say, "Go into all the world and preach the gospel to the whole creation. He who believes in me and is baptized will be saved, but he who does not will be condemned"? It's found only in a textual variant. These are the signs that will accompany those who believe. In my name they will cast out demons. They will speak in new tongues. They will pick up serpents. And if they drink any deadly thing, it will not hurt them. They will lay their hands on the sick and they will recover. Does it matter if Jesus said it? It certainly matters to the Christian groups in the Appalachian Mountains who practice snake handling as part of their worship services. Did Jesus give the entire Lord's Prayer or just half of it, as in Luke? Does it matter? It depends on which manuscript you read. Or do other textual variants matter? Does it matter whether the doctrine of the Trinity is explicitly taught in the New Testament? The only verse that comes close to teaching it directly is 1 John chapter 5, verses 7 and 8. There are three that bear witness in heaven, the Father, the Word, and the Spirit, and these three are one. Does it matter if that's in the New Testament? Does it matter whether the Gospel of John ever calls Jesus the unique God or not? It's based on a textual variant. Does it matter whether the Gospel of Luke teaches a doctrine of atonement or not? The view that Jesus died for the sake of others. It depends on a textual variant. Does it matter if Jesus was in such agony before his arrest that he sweat blood? It's found in only a single textual variant of the Gospel of Luke. Does it matter that entire words, lines, paragraphs, and pages were left out by some scribes? Does it matter that there are numerous places in the New Testament where scholars cannot decide what the original text said? Does it matter that there are some places where we will never know what the original author said? Does that matter or not? Many evangelical scholars claim that it doesn't matter. But I don't believe them, because these scholars devote their lives to studying the Greek manuscripts. Why would they do that if it doesn't matter? Major evangelical seminaries raise hundreds of thousands of dollars for manuscript projects to study these manuscripts. Why would they do that if it doesn't matter? It does matter. Is the Bible a trustworthy, reliable guide? If so, what if we don't know what it originally said? For some people, these facts don't matter.
These gospel writers were not the disciples of Jesus. These gospel writers are writing in highly literate Greek. These are highly educated Greek-speaking Christians living decades later. They've heard stories about Jesus that they write down. The stories have been in circulation year after year after year after year by word of mouth. The Gospels are full of discrepancies, they're full of contradictions, they're full of false historical information. They may be valuable to you as a Christian believer. But historians have to pick and choose. The reason they have to pick and choose is because there's so much historically false information in the Gospels.
If God inspired the Bible without error, why hadn't he preserved the Bible without error? We cannot know whether the Gospels have been preserved accurately through the ages, and I'm going to try and illustrate with you by explaining how it worked. Take the Gospel of Mark. Whenever Mark was written, say it was written in the year 65 or in the year 70, in the city of Rome, say, I don't know where it was made. Whoever wrote Mark put it in circulation, and somebody copied the Gospel of Mark. Then somebody copied that copy, and somebody copied the copy of the copy, then somebody copied the copy of the copy of the copy of the copy. And we don't have any of those copies. Everybody who copied the text made mistakes. We don't have the originals. We have copies made centuries later. These copies that were made centuries later contain numerous mistakes, thousands of mistakes, tens of thousands of mistakes, hundreds of thousands of mistakes.
Right. So the first thing I'll say is that's one of the reasons that I've had trouble with traditional Christianity is because of the changes that scribes have made in the text. But it's not the only thing. Another issue is the internal discrepancies that you find within the New Testament and within the Bible, and I'm not making any stand about the Quran. I don't know anything about the Quran.
Means Dr. Badi Ahmed is not the scholar of Holy Quran, just like he is the scholar of the New Testament. And Dr. Badi Ahmed didn't know the theology of Holy Quran, just like he know the theology of the New Testament. So now let's hear and see the view of Dr. Badi Ahmed about the text of the Holy Quran.
I mean, it's absolutely the case that copies of the Quran, manuscripts of the Quran that we have today, they're not like the manuscripts of the New Testament, which have all these errors everywhere. I mean, the Quran manuscripts don't.
Obviously, the Quran has been faithfully copied for many, many centuries. So that part is absolutely right. The three major monotheistic religions in the world are Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. And what is interesting is that the New Testament, the manuscripts of the New Testament, are filled with scribal changes. And the reality is that doesn't happen with the surviving manuscripts of either the Hebrew Bible or the Quran. And so you think, well, why is that? Wouldn't that show that one of those is more valid? And my view is, no, it doesn't show that they're more valid. It shows that their scribes were more careful.
Bart Ehrman?
I do know that the Quran has been faithfully transmitted over the centuries, and for some reason Christians decided not to transmit their book as faithfully. But what I would say is that they certainly could have if they wanted to. Jews, of course, through the Middle Ages, transcribed the Hebrew Bible faithfully, and for some reason Christians just didn't do that. There's not really not a lot to be done with the Quran, because I mean, so many of these manuscripts are just the same. So there's not a lot of scholarship to do, because I mean, with the New Testament though, you have all these thousands of manuscripts that are all different from each other. So that makes the scholarship more interesting.
What would Bart Ehrman say about the Quran? And of course, Bart Ehrman doesn't talk much about the Quran, but I would like to actually read something that Ehrman did say about the Quran.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe you came across this, and I just like it'll take a couple of minutes to read. But Bart Ehrman did comment on the Birmingham manuscript.
Yeah, I've heard of this. It's certainly worth quoting. Yes.
Yeah.
Do you have it there?
Yeah, this was on his blog, July 25th, 2015. He says the significance of an astounding new discovery. Right? So people want to know, what would Bart Ehrman... Here's what Bart Ehrman says. Okay. So I hope the Christian apologists are listening. So he begins by saying, let me say that carbon-14 dating is indeed a science, but it's not exactly an exact science. It dates organic material, so on and so forth. So he's talking about the Birmingham manuscript. It turns out that there's a 95% chance that these pages were produced between 568 and 645. How good is that? The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, he didn't say that, but I'm saying peace be upon him, who in the traditional Islamic teaching was responsible for producing the Quran, was engaged in his active ministry between 610 and 632. These pages may have been produced during his lifetime or in a decade or so later. He says, in case anyone is missing the significance of that, here is a comparison. The first time we have any 2-page manuscript fragment of the New Testament is from around 200 CE. That's 170 years after Jesus' death, and 30 CE. He says, imagine if we found 2 pages of a text that contain portions, say of the Sermon on the Mount, in almost exactly the same form as we have them in what is now our Gospel of Matthew. And suppose that these pages received a carbon-14 dating of 30 BCE to 40 CE. Would we be ecstatic or what? Since I am a scholar of early Christianity rather than Islam, the discovery of Birmingham raises all sorts of questions for me that I would not raise for any of my Muslim friends or neighbors. One is a historical question, and one is a question of the modern Christian attempts to prove the truth claims of Christianity. He continues, my historical question is this: if these pages of the Quran do indeed show that the text of the Quran is virtually the same, say in 630 to 640, as it is in 1630 to 1640, as it is in 2015, that would suggest that Muslims are indeed correct, that at least in some circles it would obviously be impossible to prove that it was true in all circles, that scribes of the Quran simply didn't change it. That it would suggest, let me say it again, suggest that Muslims are indeed correct, that at least in some circles, scribes of the Quran simply did not change it. They made sure that they copied it the same every time, word for word. Now, it may be that these newly dated fragments have significant textual variance from the rest of the manuscript tradition in the Quran, and if they do, that too will be immensely interesting. But my sense is that they must not be much, if at all, different. Otherwise, that is the story that would be all over the news. I remember the scholar Alba Fideli. This is now me talking. I remember that Alba Fideli, who actually discovered this manuscript, who actually discovered it and was able to identify it because it was 1572A something Mingana, right? And she came to UC Berkeley and she gave a lecture. So I took my class over there and we actually heard her speak. And there were other professors there that were sitting and kind of just sitting and they were like sort of chomping at the bit, ready to ask questions. And she said, "Let me get through my presentation." And then finally a professor said, "So what's the big deal with this manuscript? How many variants are there and how different is it?" And she just said, "You know, it's exactly the same as what Muslim tradition says. There are no differences whatsoever. It's an vowel text, right? For the most part, but there are no changes to the consonantal skeleton. Muslims know exactly how to recite it. There are 10 qira'at. There are 10 multiply transmitted ways of reading the consonantal skeleton, and they all fit in perfectly with this manuscript." So then Ehrman says here, I'll just finish with this, he says, back to my question, if Muslim scholars over the centuries from the beginning made dead sure that when they copied their sacred text they didn't change anything, why didn't Christian scribes do the same? Christian scribes did not do the same thing. Okay, and he goes on, you can go on his blog and you can read it. But, I would say that it is impossible to fabricate the Quran, and it has always been impossible. Just as it is impossible today, it was impossible at any point in the past.
Just because it's so massively...
It's a mass transmitted living tradition that's recited, heard, memorized every day since its inception.